My John Deere 9400 arrived in my yard in April of 1995 with the basic 12-foot pickup table, which was used for harvesting windrowed durum as well as canola. At that time, the vast majority of all combines sold in Western Canada came with that particular feature, and it was almost considered standard equipment rather than an option. When given the choice, I would prefer using this combine for straight cutting versus the alternative of spending each day picking up swaths. But having said that, I still had to rely on Mother Nature to provide all the necessary dry down. Custom grain dryers are few and far between, and in the same way, my farm did not have enough acres to justify the ownership of a new dryer. As well, crop desiccation in those days was still in the experimental stages. But that idea really didn't appeal to me, as I felt this was one road that I had no desire to travel down. I was therefore put in the position where I would just have to sit and patiently wait until the crop was below the safe storage level of 14.5% moisture content before I could commence any harvesting. As can be seen here now in late September, my maximizer is busy in a field of Canadian hard red spring wheat that has properly ripened under the autumn sun. The 20-foot straight-cut header mounted on the front of this combine was purchased new in 1984 and had been originally used with my Titan 6620 combine for 11 consecutive years. The viewing audience may ask why on earth would I not increase to at least a 24 or possibly even a 25-foot table when I made the change from the smaller 6620 to this much larger machine. That is a reasonable question, and it certainly deserves a good answer. It so happened that when this 20-foot arrived in the summer of 1984, I did not have adequate storage facilities to handle this item. So we had a new shed built in our yard that was large enough so I could store both the combine and the table inside as one unit. The only problem was, in those days, the maximum allowable door width that could possibly be installed on this new building was a fraction less than 22 feet, which made for a tight squeeze at the best of times. So that meant extreme caution was exercised at all times whenever this table was attached to the combine, because in the 12 years that I owned the 6620, it would return home to its safe haven each and every night. Now with this newer, more expensive combine, I had to make a judgment call. Should I buy a 25-foot table, which would result in leaving the 9400 out in the open, or should I just keep what I have and travel faster to compensate for any lost time? I knew that altering the door frames and sub-assemblies on the machine shed would not only be expensive, but could possibly weaken the structure itself. Besides, it was a foregone conclusion that I would never be comfortable leaving my combine outside exposed to the elements. The 9400 was given top priority, and in the 16 seasons that this machine was on my farm, it only spent one night parked in the field, due more to unforeseen circumstances than anything else. It is no stretch of the imagination to say that this family farm has come a long way in harvesting equipment, as my father reiterated that many times over the years. Unfortunately, he did not live long enough to witness this latest addition, just as I never was given the privilege to understand what his generation lived through. His harvest would begin in mid-August with a small fleet of horse-drawn binders cutting the crop and laying the sheaves on the ground in bundles. Afterwards, groups of workers would begin the back-breaking task of converting all these bundles into stooks, or what is often alluded to as shocks on the American side of the border. In this photo, the sheaves are being tossed into the 28-inch threshing machine from both sides of the feeder, while the teams of horses take a well-deserved rest before heading back into the field for another load. In the final analysis, my father was justifiably proud of this piece of farm equipment he referred to as a separator, rather than a threshing machine. He had owned it for many years, and it had worked long and hard for him, just like many of his friends and co-workers, who could be counted on each year to help bring his crop in from the fields. For all those reasons, he was truly grateful. My 9400 combine was used to harvest many different crops, such as spring wheat, durum wheat, canola, flax, and malt barley. I used it under many varying occurrences, ranging from comparatively easy conditions to those that I considered extremely adverse. In that same time frame, I only suffered one major breakdown that can be attributed to the fault of the machine. In that situation, I was down for more than a day, but I guess that speaks volumes for the 2,300 total engine hours that I put on this combine. By the same token, the 9400 was easy to adjust for variable changes in thrashing throughout the day, and the spacious cab made for a very quiet, comfortable environment in which to work. This John Deere Model 4400 was my first self-propelled combine that I bought secondhand in 1979 and which was used for 4 seasons to harvest only windrowed crops. Naturally, my father wished to be involved with harvest to some degree, and he was more than happy to haul the wheat away from this combine each year with my grain truck. Even after I had acquired my 6620 Titan in 1983, he still managed to perform the role of truck driver, despite the fact that he was now turning 80 years of age and had experienced 65 continuous years of grain harvesting in one aspect or another. By 1984, my older brother was able to take time off from his work in the province of British Columbia to travel back to our farm located here in Saskatchewan in order to help my father with some of the workload. By 1985, a new face entered onto the prairie landscape when Mrs. Deere Dawn became my newest truck driver. She used our 3-ton every year to deliver the grain to the bins in our yard, and when the 9400 appeared, the GM still remained as an excellent heavy-duty truck for the job at hand. With good crops, and with an increase of more farmland, I decided by 2005 to change to a larger grain truck that would make this task a lot easier for Girl Friday. This GMC Top Kick had all the bells and whistles that one could ask for in a tandem, but probably one of the nicest features that my wife appreciated was its Allison fully automatic 6-speed transmission. It was a welcome change indeed, as she only had to push a button on the dash to put it into gear, and after that the truck would take care of all the transmission shifting by itself. Looking back at the 40 years that I spent in the world of agriculture, I realized that the grain harvesters that I owned were never the largest machines that were available in the marketplace, but in fact they could be classed as being some of the smallest. What became the most obvious to me in those 4 decades was the continuous evolvement in design and features by the factory engineers at East Moline, Illinois. And for that reason, I was proud to work with equipment that had the emblem of the leaping deer depicted on the sheet metal. It also helped when Deere & Company had the foresight in 1974 to construct the largest parts warehouse in Western Canada in a location only 60 miles from my farm. With their strong dealership network in this district, I only had to make the necessary phone call at the right time, and the much-needed part, regardless of the machine, was only a short drive away. When time is of the essence and every moment counted on keeping my operation running smoothly during the busy season, it was nice to know any problems could be resolved quickly and efficiently. Service was indeed the other half of a great product. This concludes the final chapter of archival video that was sourced from old VHS tapes filmed here on the Canadian Prairies approximately 30 years ago. It was a labor of love in editing each of them, and I trust you were able to glean some small portion of understanding of what dryland crop production consisted of in this rural district. Unfortunately, since we have now retired from farming, I feel the chances of gathering enough material together for any future agricultural YouTube video is extremely remote. I will, of course, entertain any and all ideas that come my way, and hopefully something tangible can be eventually created that will be of some interest to my viewing audience. In the meantime, I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of you who took a few minutes out of your day to watch my various YouTube productions. And naturally, it would be a huge mistake on my part if I did not acknowledge all the encouraging likes that I received after the release of every video. I certainly look forward to your many different opinions, good, bad, or otherwise. And although I may not have answered each individual comment, they were always very interesting to read and greatly appreciated. Finally, I owe a debt of gratitude to those who honored me by subscribing to my channel. You far exceeded my wildest expectations, and I do sincerely apologize at this point in time that all these old vintage films have regrettably come to an end. I thank you for watching.